All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give it just a couple more minutes and then we'll get started here. All right, everyone can see the screen and hear me? Yeah, Craig, I'll be going over crude and the euro and gold and probably touch on the yen as well. All right, cool. Okay, so Daniel is officially back. He had a little bit of a mishap last night. He had a blown tire, but he made it back safely from vacation this last week, so he should be back in action next week. So I guess for today, I'm gonna just jump right into it. Last week I covered a little bit about just more of the tools that we use and gave a little bit more of an introduction there. So let me post the link from last week if you guys, if anybody new is curious and wants just a bit more info there. So there's the link to last week's overview. Okay. So yeah, we'll cover 3 or 4 markets, probably 4 markets, and then just basically go over a couple of setups and the recent developments in the markets, and how that's changed our outlook moving forward into next week. So let's start with crude. So we are back on the weekly, and not much has changed as far as what we are expecting. So we're favoring still another high to complete this larger 4th wave. So looking at this large 5-wave sequence to the downside, we've got a completed 3 at this low, and we're now looking for that finished 4th wave. So keeping in mind that it's possible that this is the 4th wave right here, that would be our alternate count, but that is not what we're favoring at this point. So it's looking like we potentially just made a corrective low to get the kickoff for that final wave to the upside. So we'll look at some smaller charts and you can see why that may be the case. But 6160 to 80, I mean, there's kind of a 20-30 tick range in there that looks pretty good for the end of this 4th wave. So we've obviously got a couple of areas in the geometry. We've got the bottom of this channel from high to high. We've got the midline of the split channel, and just going low to low, we've got that center median line, which is giving you, basically the exact same channel as the high to high channel. So it's all giving the exact same slope. And also the previous fourth wave is coming in at that exact area, which is, that looks pretty nice. That's actually something that we like to see, and is not uncommon at all to finish a fourth wave of a higher degree within the vicinity of a fourth wave of the one lower degree. So that would actually be about perfect where we finish the fourth wave here. It comes in line with those areas. Just curious here if we have, yeah, we'll probably have a bit of a fib confluence there. That's the 61.8 extension at 80. Okay, so let's drop down to the daily. So, like we've been talking about, I mean, this past several months, I guess, really it's been, what, a year now? We've had just a lot of sideways overlap, and so it's not exactly clear as to what exactly is going on here in terms of a corrective wave to the upside, but it's pretty obviously corrective, right? So you can see the overlap in these waves, and that should tell you correction, right? So as far as Elliott wave goes, I mean, that's certainly a characteristic of a corrective wave when you have overlaps. So even if the actual, the exact count isn't clear, that's one giveaway to look for. So one possibility is this kind of WX, Y, X, Z. So it's just a series of threes essentially. So it's looking like this is potentially a completed correction here. So we're looking for one more wave up for that last C wave to finish out this larger fourth. So 4 being completed up here at a new high. And this is looking like a decent spot. As you can see, I mean, there's a couple of really nice areas in the geometry. So we've got this trend line from low to low. And then we've also got this parallel. It's basically a copy of a channel that's coming in there. And the reason that I like this, it might be a little bit less of an obvious one to draw, but if you look at the way that we've used these other channel parallels, so just look at the way that we've respected these areas. So we've got, I mean, just a ton of touches on this trend line. So these are all just copies of, the exact same channel line, just moved to different locations, basically just looking for confirmation that it's, a channel that's being respected. And so basically I just made a copy of this same channel, the same trend line, the same slope, and brought it down to these lows, and that's coming in at that same spot. So it's looking like completed ABC down, ABC up is what we're now looking for that finished fourth wave. So we're kind of at an interesting spot because we've retraced so far, that. And actually, let me drop down to the 240 so you can see that better. I mean, we've come down to a little bit beyond the 78.6. So that's definitely what we like to see, and we typically see in crude, is that full deep retracement. And because we've done that, it's, you know, basically kind of here or never. And, you know, if we drop lower, then we're probably going to start expecting a break of this low. And if we break that low, then definitely we'd be switching our bias, and we'd start thinking that this is actually the major high for the end of the fourth wave. So until that happens, until we actually break this low, which we're, you know, thinking we won't do until we make new highs, then we will maintain that this is a corrective wave, and we're now looking for more upside. So this is actually a pretty nice setup in crude that was, let's see, I guess that was yesterday. What time was that? Yeah, yesterday at 8 or 9. We had a few really nice areas in the geometry here. So I already showed you that trend line from low to low on the daily, and then that channel parallel. And then also we've got this upsloping lower median line coming in at the exact same area, pretty much the exact same slope. And that's just drawing from the widest point to the lowest low here, that major low. And then we've also got this smaller upsloping channel from this intermediate high to the major high. And the reason that I used this little intermediate high is not the most obvious. You know, we could go from, let's say, here, and that actually brings that center median line down a bit lower. So it doesn't look, you know, obviously it doesn't play into that setup nearly as well. But the reason that I chose this high is because of this copy. So I just made a copy of this median line, and you can see how perfectly we used that for those lows and that high. So obviously there's respect for that downtrend, right? For the slope of that downtrend. So that gives me more confidence that that is probably the channel to use. And look what we did. So just a pretty much perfect touch of all three of those areas. It was actually like 3 to 5 ticks short of those areas. I mean, we're on a 240 minute. So in my book, it's a touch, you know, it's very, very close. And then also, you know, obviously we overthrew the 78.6 retrace, and we had quite a bit of divergence coming in there at the low as well on some of the smaller time frames. So Daniel actually bought that. I believe he's still long, and it's looking like potential just correction, and this might be the end of it. So let me show that on the hourly. So it's kind of looking like maybe this is a corrective high, and we're going to go put in another low, because we basically just ticked out this high, and we're right at resistance here. So that's just taking, you know, the obvious two highs, major high to major high, and that gives us that downsloping upper median line. So we've obviously found some resistance against that. So we'll see. I mean, Sunday we might, you know, pop right through that, but it's looking like a potential corrective high. And I think Daniel is still long. So ultimately he's holding to see if this will play out as a major low. And you know, if that's the case, it's obviously going to be a massive move to the upside. So I've got this also counted as a WXY. So that's just a series of 3 waves. So it's basically just, you've got your 3 waves in a corrective move as far as Elliott wave goes. And so with your WXY, you've just got a combination of 2 of those linked together is all that is. So I've got an extension from W to X, and that's giving me this 61.8 extension at that low as well. So it's looking definitely like a decent spot for a low, but we will see how this plays out. And it was actually a decent setup for a long this morning for a higher low setup, and I'll actually kind of go over that just briefly on the 5-minute. Let me jump over. So this is the setup that I took this morning. And it was, so, here's where Dan got long. He's long at 31 and expecting this to be just a, corrective pullback and then the kickoff of a 3rd wave to the upside. And, now it's looking like potentially it's actually an A, B, C corrective high and now new lows. So that's kind of what we're waiting, and that's the to be determined here. But as far as the setup this morning, it was pretty picture perfect. So we've got the this channel from low to low, just using the major 2 lows, and that gives us the kiss goodbye line, which is just basically the top of the channel. After we broke out, it turns into that kiss goodbye line. So that's just the way that the channel works. Once price breaks beyond the channel, we get that magenta color, and that then acts as support, right? So we break out, come back to it. You can see that we've already used the channel here and here. So there's, definitely some validity to the channel going into this area as price is moving down. We can see that the top of the channel has been respected. And then also drawing from the major 2 lows here, upsloping, we've got this lower median line of this pitchfork coming in at that same area, right? And then we've got the midline. This is actually a huge channel to be drawn on the 5-minute. Let me so that's actually this channel here on the 60. You can see the midline of that huge channel. So that's what I've got on the 5-minute there. Just the 50% of that channel. So that's what that is right here. And then that's the 61.8 retracement. And then we've got a double top here. So it's looking like A, B, C down for a corrective move, which is exactly what you like to see, 3 waves into a low. And so I bought that. Tim, another guy in our room, bought it. I think actually a couple of the guys were able to grab that. So I got out at 03. So I got 49 ticks out of it. And it's now looking like, let me turn on my volume. So we actually had back-to-back churn bars right here. An extreme climax, back-to-back churn bars. And so that's where I exited. And then we've since made one more slightly higher high and ran into that that downsloping upper median line right here on the hourly. So Again, we'll see if that ends up being a corrective high or not. And you know, if we make another low, we'll actually be still, you know, just slightly overthrowing these major areas. So that actually wouldn't be too bad of a look to make one more slightly lower low. So I'd get a little bit nervous if we break below these areas because, again, we've already retraced over 80%. So the potential obviously is that we could keep moving lower, but until we do, until we break that low there, I'm looking for a major corrective low to head up to new highs. So that is crude. I guess as far as, you know, moving into next week, once we get a bit more, or if we get a bit more commitment to the upside, are a little bit more convinced of a major low here, then I'll definitely be looking for longs. And actually, I was going to show one more chart. We actually had a really nice setup. This was on Tuesday. We've got just a picture perfect confluence in the geometry. So this is just on one time frame. And let's see, does that? Not quite. So we've got this downsloping channel from low to low. And we've got that center median line from the resulting pitchfork. We've got a low here. We've got a high here. So you've got confidence in that pitchfork coming into this high, right? Look at all the lows here where we've respected that pitchfork. So you know coming into the high that we've got a very valid pitchfork. We come up and touch it perfectly. And that's also the center median line from low to low here. So major low to this low, and we've got that upsloping area. And then I just drew in this smaller channel, and that upper median line is just a bit higher. I don't know. I don't think we quite touched it. No, so there's basically a confluence that's literally 1 or 2 ticks higher, and then we just touched that larger center median line. So pretty awesome look to a high there. All right, so let's jump to the euro now. Okay, so we are now looking for basically the end of this first wave of a new impulsive move to the upside. So we've got a massive first wave, second wave, third wave, triangle, fourth wave, break below the fourth wave, you know, the beginning of the triangle to confirm that it's a triangle. We've since turned up quite strongly. So, you know, any thoughts about this still being part of a larger fifth wave to the downside is, you know, those are pretty much out the window. It's looking very much like completed fifth. And now we're looking for much more upside. And we are at some pretty strong areas in the geometry. Yeah, Harold. So it is on YouTube. Clint, would you mind posting the link to the YouTube stream? Thanks. Yeah, so we've got a few really nice areas right at this high, and we have, you know, that's actually, this is the same group of areas that we were talking about last Friday. So we've we've basically made a slightly higher high since then, but still finding resistance here. And basically all that is a shift pitchfork drawn from this low to the major low, and that's what you get this center median line. And just to get some extra, confidence in that shift median line, because it's not something that, I draw all that often. It's pretty useful in certain cases, but it's not something that I really remember or think to draw all that often, but it definitely is pretty useful. And we actually had another guy in the room that found that one, but I just made a copy of it and I brought it down to these highs, and you can see, I mean, it's been used pretty perfectly at, I mean, just count the number of times it's been hit. So it looks, very valid for that slope to the downside. And so we're right at that one. We are at this upsloping channel, which is basically a copy of this center median line. So that's just a pitchfork drawing from low to low. Made the copy of the center median line, brought it down to this low, and that's what we're right at right now. So obviously quite a bit coming together here, and we are just looking for the end of this first wave to the upside. So let me drop down, because it's actually, here's the daily, it's actually looking like it's completed. So we've got our first 1-2, and then our 1-2 of one lower degree. So we've got our 1-2. Now this is the 1-2 of the third wave, right? And now we've got what looks like a completed third wave of this 1-2. I know that is probably confusing and convoluted, but basically it's looking from this low, it's looking like a completed 5 waves up. Okay, so we're looking now for a deeper pullback. So again, if this is just one up for a major a major move to the upside, then we're looking for a deeper correction, but still much more continued upside. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you can count, 5 waves into that high. We've got a nice fib confluence here. So this is actually the extension of, I've got the first wave extended from the end of the fourth wave. So that's the 38.2% extension. And then I've got the length of the first wave extended from the end of the second wave, and that's giving us 100%. That's actually not really a ratio that we would typically find or look for, but it's pretty interesting that happens to also be 100%. So far this move is actually 100% of this move. So definitely looks like some relatedness there between the waves. So let me show you the 240-minute and the reasons for why it looks like a completed 5 to the upside. So again, we've got our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we've been talking about as a possibility is that this first break to new highs, and then the pullback is just a 1-2 of the next 5 waves for just this last wave in the sequence, right? So this is just the first 1-2 in that final wave. So that's the alternative. You can see I've just got it marked out with this cyan color. And what we're favoring though is that last wave, instead of being this extended move to the upside, is actually complete right here. So we've got just a mini 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to this high, just barely breaking above this high. Just a tick out of the high to new highs, and we've since come back quite a bit. And the reason that I'm now favoring that is just the distance that we've retraced. So when we were talking earlier, we were still actually favoring continuation before we get that deeper retracement, and it's looking like that's much less likely at this point. So I've still got that alternate drawn in there, but not looking likely. So basically, if this is a completed fifth, then what would we be looking for? We'd be looking for a correction of that completed 5 waves, right? So if we've got the end of an impulsive wave here, then we'd be looking for the correction to form, right? To correct that impulse. So this is likely the first, A wave, that first wave of the correction. And I'm thinking that we'll probably come a little bit lower. We're at a couple of decent areas, and I'll go over that on the hourly, but it's looking like maybe a bit more downside, and then put in a B wave, and then I'll definitely be looking to short that. So actually, just to add to some of the areas for this high, to support, the case for this being a major high, we've also got this slightly upsloping upper median line, taking this low to low. That's a little bit easier to see on the hourly, so we'll look at that in a second. But we've also got the top of this channel, so drawing from the major low to the next low, we've got that channel, and that's coming in at the high as well. Okay, so these are the areas that we've got that are supporting a low here, and that's definitely not out of the question. So I've got quite a bit of geometry drawn in on this chart, but I've got them kind of color coded, so hopefully that's clear enough. Basically, we've got this lower median line just drawing from high to high, and you can see the times that we've touched it as we've kept dropping. We've touched it a couple of times. We touched it a third time here. We've found support, and we're also actually at a 138.2 extension pretty perfectly. So I'm thinking this is potentially an A, B, C, W for the first set of 3 waves down, an X wave, and then potentially A, B, C down for a Y wave. That's a possibility that would support this as a low, but I'm not completely convinced that that's the case. But if that is the case, then that 138.2 comes in perfectly. So that actually looks pretty nice. But really, the next area I think is the better area for the completion of this first wave to the downside. So let's go over that on the 240 minute. So we've got this uptrend line, and all that is basically I started this thing drawing from low to low here, from this low to this low, and then I made, I basically just made a copy and pulled that back, and we found some support and resistance on this, quite obviously. So it's looking like a very valid trend line, and that is coming in at just below 1600. So that's the first area. And the second area that would support another low is this same pitchfork that gave us the high. So that's just the lower median line of that pitchfork. And obviously, you know, again, because we've seen support or, you know, reactions in price from this this pitchfork, we've got confidence that, yeah, that's definitely going to be an area to watch out for if we do make it down a bit lower. Give me just a second, guys. I'll be back in a couple seconds. Okay. So those are the the couple of areas on the 240 minute. And what we've also got is the 161.8 extension. That's going to be closer to 1540. And then we've got, let's see, we've got the 78.6 retracement coming in at 570. And then we've also got this kiss goodbye line, so just the top of this channel. So drawing from this little intermediate low to the major low. And I think it probably, I think it probably connected automatically to this widest point here. So I pulled that back to the major high. And I mean, you can see we've obviously used that channel here. And then you can see that we kind of broke through, retested here, and then a little bit of an overthrow there. So that would come in quite a bit lower. So depending on, you know, how fast and sharp we move down, that may or may not play a role. But so quite a few areas coming in between 1550 and 1600. So that's definitely going to be an area to watch out for. So again, just to kind of recap, moving into next week, I'll be looking for, you know, hopefully another low, and I'll definitely take a shot at a long if we can, you know, reach this 1550 to 1600 area. And once we do, you know, complete what looks like a major low, and maybe that's already done, you know, because again, we've already found a couple of major areas of support and since turned up today. So, you know, potentially that's complete. So once we're, you know, more convinced of a major low being in, then I'll look for a pullback and a higher low to get long. And that would just be looking to trade up this B wave in a larger correction. Okay. So let's jump to gold. All right. So we're dealing with another fourth wave high for the major account. I mean, similar to crude, where we've got the potential for a completed fourth here, but we're favoring another high to complete that fourth wave. So we've got a pretty obvious 1, 2, a nice 3 waves here. I'm sorry, a nice 5 waves for the third wave, and a triangle here, which is really nice to have in the sequence because the triangle is the wave preceding the final wave. So we've got that triangle, we get a break below to complete this third wave down, and then we get what looks like either a 5-wave move or a 3-wave move. It's looking, I'm thinking it's 5 waves. You can count a little first wave in here. If this is the major high, then I think you can make a case, you know, and we'll see what happens. But you could probably make a case for 3 waves. So it's not real clear, but basically we're looking for one more high to break this high, and that would give us the 3-wave look to our 4th wave, right? So that is what we're looking for, just the completion of this C wave. All the while bearing in mind that this is still a possibility of the 4th wave being complete here. So last week on Friday we were talking about sitting right at these major areas of resistance as we were going into the close for the week, and we were just talking about seeing so much more potential for the upside. So closing against resistance, but looking very bullish in the count. And so this week we did break through those major areas and then actually found resistance at this downsloping lower median line, which is just drawn from this high to the major high, and didn't quite make it to that center median line here. So we just ran into resistance before we got to a couple of those areas just a little bit higher. And let's step down to the daily. You can see this a little bit better. So that's this major area here, and you can see we touched it pretty perfectly. So what's looking nice for continuation of the upside in gold is that we broke this high. So, before it was a possibility that this was, before breaking this high, we're thinking, okay, well, it's still possible that this is just a 3-wave correction to the upside, right? And then we would, go down and go to new lows. But we've since broken this high. So it's looking like, more continuation is definitely likely. So, because we ran into that major downtrend line, this upper median line, and obviously we've turned down significantly. It's looking like this is the first wave up for this next third wave to the upside, and we're now in that second wave. So let's drop down to the 240. This was actually a pretty nice added area for that high. So basically just drawing from the major low to this low, and that gives us this upsloping pitchfork. And then we actually overthrew this center median line by a bit, didn't quite make it to the top of the channel, but you can see if we make a copy of the median line and bring it to this high, you see how we touch that perfectly? And actually that comes in pretty well with these lows as well. So this in combination with this downsloping upper median line was quite a bit in support of a high. And it's looking like a 1, 2, 3, triangle 4, and completed 5. So just the distance that we've retraced, or you know, fallen back inside of this up move, is suggesting that it's a completed sequence to the upside, and now we're looking for a correction of the entire 5-wave sequence. So we're at a couple of decent areas right now. Let's look at that on the hourly. So these two upsloping lower median lines are providing support right now, and we also got some divergence there. Basically just taking the major high to the major high, and then also this intermediate high to the major high. And both of those pitchforks are basically providing the exact same channel. So, you know, that's gotta tell you something. And we've got clear respect of the center median line here, and here, and here. So, you know, again, we see it over and over and over. And we've since found support and turned up and off of this. So I'm thinking potentially that that's the end of the A wave down. And now we'll get that B wave. So in terms of next week, I'm going to, you know, I'll basically be looking for more conviction to the upside and trying to get, you know, some of the chunk of this move, because we should be, once we do finish that A wave, we should be putting in quite a bit of a correction here. So getting long would be preferred, and I imagine I won't, I don't know, I haven't seen a lot of geometry much lower than where we're at now. There might be some that I haven't marked out yet, but there's nothing obvious that I've seen yet. So if we do break below these areas, then I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to try to buy this and, you know, find the end of that A wave. I would rather see, you know, conviction to the upside. I'd rather see a sign of strength and then buy a higher low once we can put a pullback in. So that is gold. Let me actually show you the 20-minute, because we had a pretty nice setup yesterday. Actually, that was early this morning. So just something that's obviously, unless you're up during that time, pretty difficult to trade, but it's just a picture perfect look in the geometry. So just taking this high to high, and I actually took the auto line back to this high, I'm sorry, this low, and it's not exactly an obvious spot to draw it to, but what you did have, which would, you know, suggest that that's an appropriate place to anchor this pitchfork, is support right here, just perfectly at that low. So as you know, as we're sitting here looking for the end of this retracement, we're seeing the potential for a lot more downside, and we're seeing a break of this high. So if this is a correction to the upside, we're looking at this as an A wave, this is a B wave, which is 1, 2, 3 waves. So that makes complete sense. And we're now looking, you know, let's just imagine that we're here looking for where this thing is going to be completed, and I can draw this in. I can, you know, play around with the anchor of that pitchfork and anchoring it to this previous low. You know, I can see the perfect touch at this low. That gives me confidence that that's, you know, very potentially a valid pitchfork. And you know, that's exactly what was used here at the high, and then also right here, we've got this smaller upsloping channel, just using the previous two smaller lows and that center median line came in line perfectly there as well. Wonder what the extension looks like here. Yeah, a bit through that 100% extension. So that was something that occurred last night that was, or early this morning, that was difficult to trade, but just a picture perfect look in the geometry. All right, so let's jump to the yen really quick, and I'll just do a bit of an overview there, and then I think we'll call it a day. I mean, it's very correlated with gold, so much of it is the same as far as the the major counts and the higher time frame analysis goes. So looking for that finished fourth wave, potentially finished fourth wave, but less likely. And we've also got what looks like a completed first wave in the next 3 waves to the upside. And I think I like to follow yen, partly just because it is correlated to gold, but has its different looks. So you've got different geometry coming in, different fibs and stuff that help to confirm that you might not necessarily get in let's say gold. So in this case, we've got a really nice extension at this high, which helps to suggest that in the yen and also gold, this very well may be a major high. So basically that's just an extension of the length of this first wave to the end of the fourth. And we got the 261.8 right there at the high. And we've got a couple of areas that we've pulled back to. We've got this major trend line from low to low that we actually haven't quite made it down to, and then the bottom of this pitchfork, this black pitchfork, just that lower median line. So a couple of areas, just looking at gold and the yen, these 2 major areas in gold and that lower median line in the yen are suggesting very possibly that this is our first wave down. So as far as next week goes, yeah, definitely looking for longs if we can maintain above that low. And especially we've actually seen quite a nice sign of strength in the yen, so that's actually looking pretty good. If we put in a deeper retracement, it might be worth a shot at a higher low. But gold is, it's seen some support here, but it's since pulled back quite a bit. So I think I would like to see potentially a bit more of a push to the upside, especially since we're kind of lingering at these final areas in the geometry. I'll have to do a bit more markup with the geometry to see what we might have a bit lower. Again, there's nothing obvious that I've seen in the analysis that I was doing earlier. So I'm going to be a little bit leery of a buy here, just because we've obviously rejected from that support, and we actually came down pretty hard. So hopefully we can get that nice sign of strength and get some more continuation to the upside. So I guess that's right at about an hour, so I think we will call it a wrap there, guys. Are there any questions about the past week or moving forward with going in next week? I guess we had a huge sell-off in the NASDAQ. It was like the largest down week in the NASDAQ this year, I think. So I'm going to be probably, I don't know, man. It's been tough with these pullbacks because, you know, you get this huge sharp move to the downside, and it's looking like, okay, that's probably just the first wave, and maybe we'll get a bit more continuation, but obviously that hasn't been the case. So I'm hesitant to say that we'll get another wave to the downside. It's looking like we're probably just gonna, you know, knock out the longs and just keep on going. So I think still, you know, if we can get a decent setup for a long, whether that's, you know, in this case, it's probably going to be a high or low setup going into next week, then it's probably worth a shot to expect continued upside. So, all right, guys. Well, I guess we'll call it there. So happy Friday, and have a good weekend. And we will talk to you all next week. All right. Take care, guys.